Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of the Fast Company Innovation Festival. It's great to see a full house here and everyone here. Really looking forward to this conversation. I am absolutely really thrilled to be here with Jonathan Haidt, who is somebody whose work I've been following for many years. John is the Thomas Cooley Professor of Ethical Leadership at NYU, Stern School of Business, and the author of The Anxious Generation, of course. That does not really begin to describe what John has been able to accomplish, especially in recent years, but really going back for quite some time. It is rare to have a public intellectual whose impact on society is so profound, measurable, and meaningful. Since he began talking about mental health, the impact on mental health of children and teens, of smartphone usage, 20 states have implemented bell-to-bell, 20 states plus DC, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong on any of those numbers, bell-to-bell bans, no phones in school, more certainly on the way. Australia has recently enacted the most dramatic law to date, where children under 16 will not be able to establish or maintain social media accounts at all as of this December, when that goes into effect. We'll get into all of this. First, though, I want to point out sort of an irony of the tension that's at the heart of this conversation sometimes, which is that I wish we had one of those pouches where you all could put your phones in them before you had to walk into this room for this conversation. I actually know we're going to hold your attention. You're not going to be tempted to look at your phone.
Make sure it's off.
On the other hand,
okay. Oh my God, it wasn't off. Thank you.
On the other hand, I want you to capture social media of this session and post it to your feeds so everybody knows about this conversation. Mm-hmm. Therein lies a little bit of the rub. We are all adults here, of course. This is different. And I realize I'm stretching with this metaphor a little bit, so I will stop doing that. But let's get into it. Let's start at the beginning, just in case anybody is not familiar. What is the mission of The Anxious Generation, the book, as well as the movement?
It's to roll back the phone-based childhood and restore the play-based childhood. And so just to expand that a little bit, we saw a collapse of mental health beginning in 2012. There's never been anything so sharp. It wasn't like a trend up. It was like there was no change in depression, anxiety, self-harm from the 90s through about 2010, 2011, no sign of anything. 2012, somebody seems to flip a switch somewhere in the world, I suspect Menlo Park, California, and levels of anxiety, depression, and hospitalization for self-harm skyrocket, very sharp for girls, a little less sharp for boys. And when I found out that that was the same thing in Canada and Australia and the UK and New Zealand and Scandinavia and most of Europe, I realized something is changing humanity in a disastrous way. And the obvious candidate was social media and video games. And as I looked into it, the evidence was very clear for social media. Video games is more complicated. We can get back into it because we need to talk about girls and boys separately. But the story that I ended up telling in The Anxious Generation is it's not just, oh, the damn phones. The book is really a book about childhood. And human children need to play, like all mammal children. That's how we wire up our brains, is through play. And kids used to play, and almost everybody in this audience used to play outside with your friends sometimes by the time you were 8 or 9 years old. A lot of your parents, do you let your 8 or 9-year-old wander around the neighborhood on a bicycle and kids go off in a pack to buy ice cream? It doesn't happen much anymore. If anyone sees an 8-year-old on a bicycle, they'll call the police nowadays. So we took away normal, healthy human childhood and we just put them on screens, and the result has been catastrophic globally. Oh, you can ask me about the moral panic thing later, but all right.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into a little speed round of some of John's critics, of which there are many, but let's hold off on that for now. Bring us up to date on, and this is actually a good way to kind of get into the Australia rule. You know what? Actually, let me back up one sec. The New York State school phone ban. Yep. So the Times, very recently, last week or two, posted a story, kind of like the tone of it was interesting. It was sort of like it was infused with this tone of sort of surprise, that it's actually going pretty well. Kids, there was some complaints, there's some parents, oh, I can't reach my child during school hours, what if it's an emergency, this kind of thing. But overall, people were, and the kids themselves were relatively sanguine about it, at least according to this story. So I guess what I'm asking you is, would you like to take a victory lap here in this room?
Oh my God, yeah. What I will say is that things were lined up to make this incredibly easy to solve. Because here's what things were like 2 years ago. The teachers have hated the phones for 10 or 15 years. How can you teach when your kids are watching TikTok and porn? the whole back row is watching TikTok and porn, and actually in some schools everybody is. Also video games. How can you teach? The teachers have hated it. The administrators have hated it because the fights in the bathroom are done for social media. So they've hated it for a long time, but they were afraid of the parents who would object. And guess what? The kids don't like it either. We've done a lot of surveys of Gen Z. They don't like social media, but they feel trapped. We did a survey, 50% of Gen Z said they wish social media had never been invented. The world would be better if it was never invented. Once it's here, I have to use it because everybody else does, but I'm trapped. And so a phone-free schools, it liberates them from the trap. And it frees the teacher to, they can actually now pay attention only to the teacher and to the other kids, which is great because they don't have much contact with other kids anymore. Everything goes through the screen. So the big surprise on phone-free schools has been that wherever it is rolled out, the administrators who were so afraid of the parents, they say, actually, parent reaction wasn't as bad as we thought. And the student reaction wasn't as bad as we thought. And by 2 or 3 weeks in, the students, and I know this, I know some New York City public schools students pretty well, by a week or 2 in, they say, lunch is actually really fun. Like, we played a card game, we did this like guessing game thing, like they're talking to each other. And the universal thing that we hear when a school goes phone-free is we hear laughter in the hallways again. The lunchroom is really loud. School has been horrible for a long time. There's very little fun. It's all tension. It's all social media and tests. So of course the absenteeism is rising. So my point is, everything was lined up like, why the hell didn't we do this 10 years ago? And there are reasons for that. But almost everyone is on board now and loving it.
Let's interject some news into this conversation before we return to some of the bigger themes. It seems that there may be a TikTok deal. Speaking of TikTok, it has been announced. Please don't quote me on these details. They are sketchy still, it seems, in the news reports I read, but it's Oracle, the VC firm Andreessen Horowitz, and the private equity firm Silver Lake owning the majority of the platform. This is all not a done deal by any means, but this has come out. The Trump administration says they want to have somebody from them on the board, so there's that. There's a lot remains to be worked out on this, but do you see, and Frank McCourt, who shares some ideas with you for sure, has long talked about trying to create a better and sort of more equitable internet, was one of the names that was bounced around over the course of this long protracted process about the future of TikTok. That doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It seems like it's going to be this group. So do you see anything changing here?
What's the Who song? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It'll be slightly different. So let's look at national security and then let's look at mental health. National security, one of the big, to have our main adversary be able to control the algorithm and target things to our kids to change their politics, it's unbelievable that we let this happen. It's like if in the Cold War, the Soviet Union owned PBS and NBC and ABC and the New York Times. So it's about time that we ended that. But the thing is, the Chinese are already hacked into our electrical grid. They can control the flow of natural gas in this country. Who the hell thinks that they're not going to have just as much control, or at least they'll be able to get all the data from TikTok? So the national security situation, they'll have to be a little more covert, but it'll still be a threat, I believe. But the mental health situation was catastrophic and is going to stay catastrophic. TikTok should be shut down. IQ was rising in this country from the mid-20th century all the way through 2010. It was called the Flynn effect. People are getting smarter. Now they're getting dumber, especially young people, but all of us, because we're all so distracted. The short videos are the most, in terms of total damage done at industrial scale to children and to adults, TikTok is the biggest perpetrator. Shutting down TikTok would be the greatest thing we could do for human intelligence and human thriving, and at least age gating it so that nobody under 16 can be on it, as the Australians are doing, would be the biggest practical step we could take.
Good segue to my next question, which is to kind of bring us up to state on the state of the 4 norms. So the 4 norms in John's book are no smartphones before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. So going down there. Number 1, no smartphones before high school. Long way to go there. No social media before...
let's just do one at a time.
Sure, okay.
So no smartphone before high school. I picked high school because the whole point of the last part of the book is I'm not going to try to tell you what's the healthiest thing. I'm a social psychologist who has observed that we're all trapped in a set of collective action problems. And so the only way out is if we can agree on something to do together. So ideally, I would say a smartphone at 16, social media at 18, those would be like the ideal. We're not going to get that. My calculation was, how about we do a sharp divide between middle school and high school? Let's clear all of this out of middle school, the hardest part of adolescence, especially for girls. Clear it all out. In high school, at that point, a smartphone is not so bad, especially if it doesn't have social media. So that's why I picked that norm of high school or age 14. And that is actually going really well. Parents are coming together and saying, hey, our kids already play sometimes. Let's get them all landlines. There's a great company called Tin Can. Makes these really simple landlines. Doesn't cost you anything, $70 or something for the phone, and then you can talk to others for free, or you can talk to the world for a small fee. My point is, parents are innovating and saying, we want our kids to be connected directly, not through a giant platform whose stated goal is to take as much of their attention as possible. So they're getting landlines. The parents are beginning to understand that the choice isn't phone versus no phone. The choice is smartphone versus something else. In middle school especially, you can get your kid a flip phone, a basic phone. You want them to be able to call and text. You don't want them watching porn and and talking to strange men around the world. Wait at least till high school for that. So we're actually seeing a lot of movement, and this is driven especially by mothers coming together. There are all kinds of groups, smartphone-free childhood, wait until 8th. So we're actually making a lot of progress, but it's not like the phone-free. It's like gradual.
Right. And so then number 2, no social media before 16. We'll get to that with the Australia law. Phone-free schools.
Boom.
Biggest source of progress, right? Yeah.
It's 19 or 20 states plus DC have done the right thing, which is bell to bell, beginning to end. Another 19 or so did the wrong thing, which is, well, we'll just ban it during class. We'll take a whole bunch of addicts and we'll say, 8 times a day, we're going to take your drug away from you. And then you can sit there for 45 minutes thinking about the drug, and then we'll give the drug back to you 8 times a day. So, I'm hearing that it's better than nothing. It's better than not doing anything, but you don't hear laughter in the hallways. Everyone is on their phone. So if your kids are going to a school where you can text them during the day, I guarantee you your child is not getting as good an education as if the school went phone-free. And let's leave aside the issue of the Chromebooks and the iPads that should all be ripped out also, but let's leave that one aside because it's harder.
Let's talk about the Australia, it's a law, right? Is law the right word?
In Australia?
Yeah. So this passed recently. As a reminder, it's for social media for kids under 16, goes into effect in December. Kids will have access to online content, but they will not be able to create or maintain, to establish a business relationship with the social media platforms. Tell us how this happened. Did it eke by? Was it a really easy thing to pass? Like, what was the political dynamic?
No, it's a wonderful story, and again, it shows the role of mothers in all of this. There are several, 8 or so states in Australia. South Australia is a small state. Peter Malinowskis is the premier of that state. His wife was reading the book in bed, and she turns to him and says, "Peter, you've got to read this book, and then you've got to effing do something about it." And he did. He commissioned a former Supreme Court justice to do, how would it work? How would we do it? He wrote this amazing report, the French report, laying out how you would do it. And then they did it in South Australia. Now, he is of the Conservative Party, whichever, I forget what it's called. So he's the center-right party. And then around the same time, Peter Mims, the premier of New South Wales, which is the biggest state, and that's the left Labour, I forget what it's called, whatever the center-left party is, he did it also. And this is what we're seeing all over America, totally bipartisan, because almost all politicians have kids. Anyone with kids is afraid of what's happening to everyone else's kids. So they did it in 2 states. And then seeing that it's popular, and most parents are really upset about what's happening. So then Albanese, the prime minister, did it nationally. And so it's just a spectacular success. We'll see how it's implemented. Of course, there are going to be problems with the implementation. Some people will be kicked off their account when they're 30, and so there's going to be a rough period. But we have to get to the point where we have age gating on the internet. As soon as Charlie Kirk was assassinated and a video was taken of blood spurting out of his neck, that video went around the world. So many children, so many 10-year-olds saw that within hours of it happening. Right now, children are consuming everything. They're being sextorted at unbelievable rates, millions per year, because there's no age gating on anything. So we have to, it's not a choice, we have to begin age gating. And the technology companies can do it. They can do anything if they are incentivized to do it. And right now they are, because of congressional law 1998, they are heavily incentivized to not know the age of their users. And Australia is changing that.
Since you brought up Charlie Kirk, I want to ask a question about this. I want to be careful because there's a lot of information still emerging here. It does appear that the shooter, following a pattern that we've seen before, to put it mildly, appears to have been an extremely online, somewhat alienated young man who had a psychic break. So would be curious to hear your thoughts on this, any connection you see between the issues that you've studied and what happened.
Yeah. So of course, we don't know. We can't really comment on the motive. We're not sure. There are a couple of hints. Psychic break? I don't know. Was there thought that he had a psychic? I haven't seen that.
I mean, I am not a qualified person to diagnose someone, and perhaps I shouldn't have used that term. But obviously, to go from being angry about, in his words, being fed up with all of the hate that he perceived that Charlie Kirk was spewing, to doing this is a big step. Is it a psychic break?
There's no reason. No,
I don't know.
No reason to think that there was a psychological problem there. It's a very natural, normal break. And if you're thinking rationally, you make certain assumptions, then it's not an irrational thing to do to commit murder. We've seen a number of such political killings by people with no evidence of psychological imbalance. What I can say for sure is here are two trends that are giving us some of these Gen Z shooters. One is rising political polarization, which I've been studying since the late 90s, early 2000s, and the key is affective polarization. It's fine if we disagree on the issues, but that's not affective, that's ideological polarization. But as we begin to hate each other more, now the ends justify the means. They're so evil, so dangerous. If they get in power, it's going to be the end. So the ends justify the means. And we're seeing this thinking on both sides. And so I think we're in for a lot more political violence in coming years. So that's one trend, which just takes off the brakes and it really motivates a lot of people to commit violence. And then the other is the collapse of rootedness and a sense of meaning that began in 2012. The saddest graph in my book is there's a survey asked every year of high school students in this country, going back to the 70s. One of the questions is, my life feels useless. Do you agree or disagree with that? From the 90s, when they started that question, through 2010, 2011, about 9% of young people say yes. 9%, just fluctuates just a little bit. And then once again, 2012, it doubles. In the course of the next 5 to 7 years, doubles. 20% of our kids say my life feels useless. And if you're a boy, your life feels useless, you see no future, everything is about getting fame. You have to, for a boy especially, boys have to get rich quick or famous quick, otherwise they'll lose in the mating game. There's all kinds of evolutionary thinking about this, and you see it in what they say, online culture. So boys around the world historically have gambled. Do something big, get recognition. And so when you have boys who are not rooted, and this is a boy who seems to have been rooted in a religious, Christian, conservative household, but when you're immersed in social media and online games, the amount of stuff coming in and the importance for you is vastly bigger than it is between you and your parents. Your connection in your family is not nearly as important as the world surrounding you. And so the fact that we've abandoned kids, and especially boys who need guidance to go from boy to man, around the world, cultures give those boys guidance. They have initiation rites. You learn how to be a man. And we've said, nah, we're too busy. Here, just spend your whole life on Discord, TikTok, and porn, and then we expect them to turn into men? So again, I can't say exactly what happened with Tyler Robinson, but this is what's happening to our boys.
Let's return to your ideas and some of the challenges to those ideas that are out there.
Please,
so
we have it.
There is, on one hand, enormous momentum, some of the things we've talked about, phone-free schools, age verification. There's also pushback among your peers in social science to some of your ideas. There's questions around causality, things like that. So Recently Derek Thompson, a journalist I admire, had you on his podcast to talk about your ideas, and then fairly soon after he had somebody else on to basically say, why is John Haidt wrong? And there was this big sort of group study where there was a synthesis of research. I'd love to hear your response to that. Why do you think there is a pretty decent group of people in your peer group who doesn't buy your ideas as much as the general public seems to be buying them? And do any of those ideas find some footing with you? Do you question any of your own ideas as a result of that?
Sure. So first, the media narrative from the beginning has been there's a big battle, there's a giant fight between social scientists, because that makes a good story. And I was expecting that, but the surprising thing is that there was one review in Nature by a well-known researcher who studies this. There was one review that was very, very negative, and that's what everyone cites. So there's that one researcher at UC Irvine, and there are 3 or 4 others who are very vocal, and there are some others as well, but it's really 3 or 4 people who are very vocal. And then there was this big consensus study done where they tried to say, what do you think? Is Haidt right? And they recruited, I think, 200 social scientists who were researching this in some way. And the surprising thing was that they listed 26 claims that I made in the book, and people weighed in. Do you think it's probably true, not true? And then we tried to reach consensus on specific statements. But the surprising thing, I did not expect this. I thought that it was going to be sort of evenly divided. But on most of the 26 items, it was more like 5 or 10 to 1 saying this is probably true versus this is probably wrong. So actually, of course, there's debate, and that's healthy. So here's what the debate is about. I think my main critics are those who've been in this game a long time, and they've seen previous moral panics over technology. And they're right that every generation freaks out about whatever new technology the kids are using. So they're absolutely right about that, and I need to be extra careful about that. And for a while, I was wondering, am I going too far? Am I stoking a moral panic? But here's what I've learned since then. First, a traditional moral panic is one where the media spreads a story about a kid who was reading comic books and he axe murdered his mother. Maybe it happened once, maybe it never happened, but that spreads. And then people say, kid, you can't read comic books.
The kid that ate the head off a bat after listening to Ozzy Osbourne.
Right. So that definitely happens. And was that the case for social media? Why are parents so freaked out? Are they freaked out because John Haidt says it's bad for your kids? Or are they freaked out because they saw their nephew, this fun, bright kid, get lost in a web of porn and TikTok? And their kid is 5 years younger. They don't want that to happen to their kid. Mothers are seeing this in the kids around them. This is not driven by the media. This is driven by people's direct experience. So that's very different. So that's one. The other is that moral panics, the kids themselves say, no, we love comic books, we love rap music. This time the kids aren't saying that. They're saying, I wish it was never invented. So this is not like previous moral panics. Past performance does not indicate what's happening now. The other thing is that the evidence is really mounting. And we all, me and them, we agree there's a correlation. Heavy users are in worse shape. But is the correlation big enough? We fight over, is it R equals 0.08 or is it R equals 0.2? So we're arguing over the details of the correlational studies, the experimental studies, the longitudinal studies, and the quasi-experiments. Those are 4 different kinds of research. I'm putting it all together. I believe all 4 of them actually show causality. But here's the thing. Are we just going to focus on the academic studies? We don't know what's going on. All we can do is ask kids, how much time do you spend on social media? How you do? The only people who know what's going on are the companies. They have exact data on what the kid watched, what they're consuming, and how they're doing mentally. They know that. What do they say? 35 attorneys general are suing these companies, and in the process of discovery, they've gotten all kinds of internal reports. What do you think their internal reports show? That kids are addicted. The email messages going back and forth show that they designed for addiction. Snapchat, when they introduced streaks, one of their engineers said, oh, we should put more addictive features like this. This is great. So they know horrible things are happening. 10,000 reports of sextortion per month just on Snapchat. 10,000 reports a month in 2022 when this evidence came out. So they know this is happening, and they just cover it up. And they say, oh, we're going to put on more parental controls, which nobody will use. So if the kids are saying it's hurting them, if the parents are saying, I see the harm, if the companies are saying we did it, imagine if there's a court case in which the victim says he did it, the witnesses say he did it, and the victim says I did it. And then we have this big debate, well, is the correlation big enough? That's, I believe, where we are.
Let's talk just we've just got a few minutes left, and I have two more questions that I definitely want to get to. The first is product design. You touched on it in your answer there. The scientific perfection of being addicted to, the kind of endorphin hits and everything else that goes into using these platforms. I'm particularly interested, this is a little bit of a pet issue of mine. We've covered it a fair bit in Fast Company. I feel like it is the kind of ticking time bomb that for whatever bizarre reason people just sort of gloss over, or not completely, but it's not as big of an issue as I think it should be, which is sports betting, and the ease of gambling on absolutely everything in your pocket. These companies have applied a lot of what they learned over the last 20 years since the 2018 Supreme Court ruling legalizing gambling in the US to the apps that now are for betting. So if you could talk about that a bit.
Absolutely. This is a perfect question here, because the story for girls is especially about social media. That's the thing that's mostly hurting them. When I started the book, I didn't know what the story was for boys, but by the end of it, we figured it out. And it is not video games per se or social media per se. It's the complete takeover of their dopamine systems by a whole bunch of companies. So it starts with video games when they're 7, 8, 9 years old. It then moves on to porn. There's also vaping and marijuana pens and other things. They all work through dopamine. Every addiction makes future addictions more likely in our boys. And then when they get a little older, now they can begin gambling. And they can do that before they're 18. There are ways to literally gamble for money on video games. So we're raising our boys as though it's a sea of fish hooks. Our boys are walking around a sea of fish hooks with attractive bait, and they grab on and they get taken. And this is going to render them useless, and they feel useless. And the sports betting is, in a sense, the most evil, because it's bad enough to mess them up psychologically. But to then bankrupt them? I'm working with Richard Reeves, the American Institute for Boys and Men. He's fantastic on this, and he's pointed out that wherever sports betting is legalized, personal bankruptcies go up. We are destroying our boys' financial future. This is completely insane that we have done this. So, yeah, we're in big trouble. But wait, could I just, before, I know we're about to run out of time, I just want to be sure I get in one point here, because we shouldn't end with like, oh my God, everything's a disaster. We should end with the fact
Well, I have a last question about AI, so I'm sure it'll be
no, I don't
all
no.
unicorns and rainbows.
No, we only have 2
one,
minutes
so.
and 40 seconds. We
all
can't
right.
do AI. No. I would much rather that we end with this. Things are looking terrible, but the amazing thing is how fast they're changing, because people are working together. Mothers are driving it, but fathers are totally in as well. And the fourth norm is more free play and responsibility. Dads are the best at that. Dads are the ones who push to let them take more risks. So dads are really stepping up now and letting, playing with the kids, riskier play, letting them out. So parents are getting in, governors are getting in, teachers are getting in, and now I think we're ready for businesses to get in. And I'm thinking of, there have been some amazing ad campaigns, so one that comes to mind. So we're losing socialization. We're not seeing people much anymore. Derek Thompson had that incredible article. We're headed towards a future where all we do is wake up, we're on a screen all day, and then we go to sleep, because everything comes through the screen. If your business actually depends on people getting together, good luck with the future that is coming, unless we change it. And so Heineken, for example, they had these great ads. Showing just how pathetic it is to just be alone on a screen, and how much fun it is to get together with people and drink beer. And boy, do I agree with that. So, that was and these were really uplifting ads. So it's an example of a business saying, we want people out socializing. If your business requires people to come out of their home, I hope you'll be part of the movement. Where's Alexa? Alexa Arnold, my chief of staff, she's running the movement. We're working with a bunch of companies. So if you have ideas for how you might be part of the solution, please go talk to her. And Alexa's actually speaking at 10:30? 10:30. Here on this stage or upstairs? Upstairs.
Upstairs, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, please do go to Alexa's workshop. That's going to be great as well. John, thank you very much. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, yeah. Thank you.